Good evening, everybody. This is our second edition of Perspectives, and I want to welcome all of you who are joining us this evening via social media. We are a few minutes late. We want to apologize for that, but we want to thank you for staying with us. This is a program where we seek to affirm ministry. We celebrate the men and women who make ministry during COVID 19. We affirm what sacrifice they've been making, and we seek through this means to allow them to know that it is time that we begin telling the story. And the stories to be told are so many that we thought that it's a good idea and a wonderful opportunity to come right into your homes this evening where family and friends are gathered, where you're probably lying on your bed, where probably you're just finishing your dinner. It's a relaxing opportunity to listen to the great exploits of what God is doing in the lives of ordinary men and women and in the lives of his chosen individuals, his vessels, or pastors and Bible workers in the North Caribbean Conference during COVID 19. I welcome you. We have a great panel this evening. We have Pastor Dr. Samuel Telemack with us from the Inter-America Division. Dr. Telemack is the Sabbath School Director for the Inter-American Division, and we want to thank him for joining our panel this evening. He's a man with a vast knowledge of the work of God, and we are delighted that he can join us this evening in our meeting. Let's say welcome to Pastor Telemack.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm delighted to be here. I look forward to a great discussion.
Thank you so much, Pastor Telemack. We also have on our panel the Community Services Sabbath School Director for the North Caribbean Conference. If you don't know anyone, you must know him. A man who has traveled extensively, and we are delighted to have here with us this evening Dr. Henry Peters, one of the directors here in the North Caribbean Conference office. Dr. Peters, welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Pastor Filbert, and it's a pleasure being here, and good evening to everybody.
Beautiful, beautiful. And of course, we have the one and only. I probably will have to give him an honorary title, but until then, we are going to keep it humble. Pastor Hesketh Matthew, who is the Special Assistant to the President for Evangelism. We want to welcome you this evening, Pastor Matthew. Thanks for joining us again.
Thank you. It's a joy and an honor.
Beautiful. And we have one of our field soldiers who will be joining us a little later with a special interview, Pastor Sylvester Williams on the island of Tortola. He will be joining us a little later. We want to thank him for being here with us. And so we are delighted. This evening we have a very special feature that we want to share with you: community engagement during COVID-19. You would agree with me that COVID-19 has called for God's people, for each one of us, to engage with our community in various innovative ways. And throughout the past 8 weeks, while we were inside, many individuals suffered loss. Some people lost their jobs. Many individuals around suffered the wrath of not having the opportunity to go on the outside, Dr. Peters.
That's right.
And the church, God's people, took this opportunity to find innovative ways of engaging with members in our community to still be the hands and feet of God, guided and propelled by the mandate and the mantra that has been given to us, that Christ's method alone will give true success in reaching people. We were able to do as Christ did. And the quote says, the Savior mingled with men as one who desired their good. He showed his sympathy for them, ministered to their needs, and eventually he won their confidence. And we believe that over the last few weeks, that kind of engagement would have been taking place around the conference. And this evening, We are going to share with you what has been going on. We are going to identify our community. We are going to then look at models of community engagement. We're going to take time to investigate the ins and outs of our evangelistic models during our COVID 19 and moving forward. And we will seek at the end to give recognition and say thanks to those who in ministry over the past few months. It's perspectives. Look at the ins and outs of what has been done. Be very honest with who we are. And seek through your involvement to let you know that in spite of all of what has been happening, God has been really good to his people. So we welcome you this evening and we are thankful for you joining us. So, Pastor Peters, let's take some time and take a few moments to engage the community on our viewing audience. On what do you consider to be community services? When we speak of community services, what are we speaking about?
Oh, well, I think the very phrase kind of explain what it's all about. Service to the community.
Okay.
Of course, since it's a service that is rendered by the church,
Uh-huh.
it's obvious that the church exists to serve the community. As a matter of fact, community services work or ministry is foundational to the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Okay.
The roots for community services run very deep in Scripture.
Okay.
If we were to look at the New Testament in the book of Acts, it's very clear out there. So the church really exists to reach the needs of the community,
Okay.
and not really to feed itself per
Okay.
se, but to reach out to the community. So the church identify needs in the community, and in so doing, provide a ministry to meet those needs.
Beautiful. Let me go over to Pastor Matthew. Let's hear your perspective. The church reaching the community, being community minded. What's your perspective on that?
I think when the church engages the community, the church is actually fulfilling the mandate of Jesus.
Okay.
He spoke concerning being naked and being hungry. And there is this connotation of the social gospel,
Okay.
a dimension that the church intentionally takes on, in that we see the need of meeting felt needs as demonstrated by the actual literal needs as indicated by persons in the community. So we do it not merely to ultimately win them to Christ,
Okay.
though that is part and parcel. We see meeting the demand of social gospel as fulfilling part and parcel of the mandate of Jesus.
Okay. I don't know if Pastor Teddy Mack is there. I think he's there with us. Pastor Teddy Mack, are you there? Yeah, Pastor Teddy Mack. Yeah, we talking about community and the community services and its relevance and importance, and how do you see community services as being relevant and important in times like these, Pastor Teddyman?
Well, while there may be a little technical
We
difficulties
seem to
out
be having a
there,
technical problem with him.
it's important to know that the church exists in times of normalcy, and of course, the church continues to exist in times of crisis. And I know Pastor Tolim, as soon as he is able to get on, as soon as his technical difficulty is solved, he will pick up on that really. But the church serves the community in times of normalcy, and of course, in times of crisis. That serving intensifies because the need becomes
It
greater.
intensified during crisis time.
Because the need becomes greater.
Is that safe to say?
That is definitely what is actually transpiring within our community and as meted out by our recent engagements and initiative as taken by the church.
Okay, so if a church needs to impact its community, it tells me that the church must identify its community.
That's right. The church must identify its
Must
community.
identify its
As
community.
as a matter of fact, the church, unlike the mistaken notion that it's
Uh-huh.
the building and and wherever there is a building, a church building, there is a church. We tend to go beyond that because we buy into the notion that wherever the members are,
That's
that's where
where,
the church is.
right. And the church is located in the community.
Right. And it is critical if we are going to, as a church, to meaningfully and relevantly address the needs, the church must be keenly aware of the composition of its community.
All right.
And when we talk about composition, we're talking about things such as the ethnic class or
Uh-huh.
composition. We're talking about the socio-economic component of the surroundings. We're talking about the territorial boundaries.
Okay.
So each church should have a territorial boundary, knowing that this is the immediate context or the immediate range that I would like to actually make an indentation. And within that spread, that geographical spread, the church knows, well, I have low income people, I have people of such economic class, I have people of such educational background. So, knowing these hard data, the church can best respond when a crisis actually
You
arises.
want to speak to that, Dr.
This
Peters?
is so correct. This is so correct because one size does not fit all.
Correct.
There may be need for feeding program in a particular community, and there may be need for maybe providing assistance for babysitting in another community, or maybe another sort of need, educational needs, where children need help with their various subjects in school. So all these are varied needs of the community. That's why we place some emphasis on community
Right.
services.
I want you to stick a pin there, Dr. Peters and Pastor Matthew. With the varied needs in the community, the church can identify some of those needs, or every church should be able to identify some of those needs in order to reach people in the community.
That's right.
Are we together on that?
That's
Sure,
right.
right, sure. Right.
And that impact has to be felt not just by the church, but the community must speak of what the church is doing.
Exactly.
Are we together?
Exactly.
Beautiful.
Well,
And I'm going one step further. Probably I'm pushing you a little far, pushing you, because if the church isn't able to identify its community needs and impact that community need during the crisis time, it means something.
Definitely. The church has not made a difference.
All right.
And every church must ask the question, if we do no longer exist, will our community miss us?
Right. So if the doors of the church are closed, as during COVID-19, the doors of the church were closed. Did the community, you can finish the statement.
Miss us.
well, well, I can tell you, for those of you who are viewing us right here, we are in the Peters Rest area, and unfortunately, you must have heard that the Peters Rest sanctuary has just been burnt down, and a number of people from the community have been coming by and asking, "How can I help?" Because they're beginning to miss that structure out there, and but we assure them that they are not going to miss the services
Yeah.
because we are going to provide a service to the community.
And by extension, the church is the people. So we expect that even though the doors were closed, people and the church located in its environs with the people where they are would have been making a difference, representing God and being the church in the location where they were or where they live right now. I think Dr. Tedimak is online with us. Dr. Tedimak, you want to speak to this idea of the church being relevant?
in the community or friends I have on my telephone. And I anticipate some of them may be anxious. I anticipate some of them may experience uncertainty in life. Anticipate some of them may feel stressful. So I look at those needs, and I ask myself, how does the Bible echo, or how do those needs echo in the Bible? What does the Bible have to say about these specific needs that my friends may be having at the moment? And I select specific promises in the Bible and I send it to my friends. I send promises that are directly related to the needs I anticipate that they may have at the moment, or the emotions they may be experiencing at the moment. And it is so powerful when I send the verses to those person, or the promise to the person. It synchronizes perfectly with the particular condition that they're having, and they respond immediately. Say, Pastor, thank you for this promise. Thank you for this word. It is so relevant to me. It meets my immediate need. In fact, one person told me after I sent him the verse, he said he sent it also to a friend who were having similar problems. And the friend wrote back to him and said, listen, I was just contemplating suicide, but that promise you sent me really helped me to change my mind. And then if you, on top of, when you send a promise to a person based on a particular need that the person had, immediately the person's mind is turned towards God. Hello?
Yes, we are hearing you, Pastor. We are hearing you loud
Yeah.
and clear.
And look at this. Look at the dynamics. I'm showing you the interrelationship between the Bible and prayer and the person's response to God. When you send the promise to the person, it relates directly to the needs of that person. The person turns to God and give God thanks because he hears God speaking to him in the promise. Then if you follow that in 5 minutes later with a recorded prayer on your telephone, and you send a recorded prayer, say, Lord, I pray for my friend today. I pray that you would help her to be assured that the Bible says, great peace have they which love the law, and nothing shall offend them. Or God will keep you in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. When you land that prayer through the telephone on that person, but that goes on top of the promise you just sent to that person, the prayer awakens gratitude in the heart of the person.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible verse turns their heart towards God, and then they call you back, or they write you and say, thank you, thank you. And you can continue the conversation by asking, what would you like God to do for you next week? And they would tell you, and that would give you an opportunity to send another verse of scripture to relate to them. So that is to show a one-to-one relationship using the technology, which can be very impersonal, but you can become personal by sending a message directly related to the person's need. And this is one of the ways I think the church can become relevant in the community with its friends.
Thank you so much, Pastor Teddy Mack. Well said. I think it's one of the models that has been promoted. It's working effectively, and we want to thank you for bringing life to this thought. I'm coming back to you, Dr. Peters. I'm coming back to you because we're dealing with models of community services during COVID-19. As the community services director for the North Caribbean Conference, I'm sure you can take some time to speak of some of the community action that took place during COVID-19. You want to take a moment to do that?
Well, Pastor Philip, one of the things that this crisis has brought with it is an opportunity
Yes.
to do ministry.
Every crisis
in
creates an opportunity.
Right, in an extraordinary way. It opens an avenue.
Yeah.
And I can identify it by Pastor Telemac as well, because I've done many things like that. The social media, I mean, the WhatsApp and so forth. But we are doing a lot of work in that area as well, getting in touch with individuals. And you wouldn't believe it, just by sharing the promises, as Pastor Telemac has said, with individuals and praying with them, the sort of response you get. This is a ministry that we have exploded during this COVID-19. At the same time, the various islands, the community services, as is well known among those of us who are acquainted with how community services work, this is the sort of ministry that the church has as an ongoing ministry.
Mm-hmm.
So every single day of the week, every week of the month, every month of the year, crisis or no crisis. And so the members have gotten used to the routine.
Okay.
The feeding of the hungry and visiting the sick and all this sort of things. So these basic things or these regular routines have been put on hold because of the lockdown situation. However, over in Tortola, I was pleased when my Community Services Federation leader said to me, and one of the meetings that we have had, that leading up to this crisis, they were able to identify the most vulnerable with whom they were getting in contact with in times of normalcy. And because they foresaw what was coming, they were able to put plans in place to see that these folks would be taken care of during the crisis hour. And whatever avenue were given to them when it was time to really get out of the house, they gave further attention. So this is something that it was a sort of proactive approach. Continue to work. They never forsook those who were getting the regular attention.
Right.
And we find that over in the other islands as well, we have similar sort of
Let's
experiences.
switch over to St. Martin.
Well, over in St. Martin, as you know, they've been feeding the community and so forth. But at that time, or well, during the time of crisis, they were not able to open the regular soup kitchen.
Correct.
But the government had a need.
Right.
And because of the ongoing work that they've been doing, the government called on them to please do the cooking for us and help do the feeding. So when everybody was supposed to be restricted at home, the Adventist Community Services were given passes to go to their facilities, to purchase food in whatever limited way they could with the business places that would open, and prepare the food. The government supplied the food, and the Adventists were able to get out there and take the food to the essential workers during the time of crisis. The only church on the island was given that kind of privilege because they were working in times of normalcy.
I want to come over to Pastor Matthew to hear what's his take on this matter. The church finding relevance, embracing opportunity through a partnership that has long been established. There is trust, there is a sense of confidence, and you find individuals, I don't know if you realize that, I tip my hat up to those individuals because they were in, some of them were in the vulnerable group, Pastor Matthew. And at a time when everyone were supposed to be inside, they were on the outside, and they were considered sort of frontline individuals, still going through seeking to engage the community and represent Christ. I don't know what's your thoughts on that.
I think in particular what transpired in St. Martin is a good example of the type of engagement and reputation that the church, by its constant engagement, would have earned for itself prior to a crisis.
Correct.
And it is because of its consistency, its high level of engagement, that it is being recognized by other agencies and governments. And it's also a lesson for us that when we think in terms of what the church is able to dispense and the amount of resources that the church has at its disposal, one of the things we should never allow to escape our grasp is the opportunity to partner.
Yes.
Partnership.
Yes.
So while we may not have all time the dollars and cents to meet out, when we speak to resources can be dollars and cents, it can be skill sets, it can be human beings who can be made available. And I think it's because of the level and the reputation that the church has had why it is able to allow such partnership. But I want to harp back a bit, if I may, on what Pastor Telemack was saying earlier.
And I want to go back to Dr. Peters.
Okay, well,
no, you go ahead, and then I'll go back to Dr. Peters.
Because what I saw Pastor Telemack demonstrated was an approach that would have met quite an legitimate need in the time of crisis. People are very much emotionally disturbed, people are stressed, and by giving them the comfort from God's word, it is certainly meeting a dimension.
Yes.
But we keep in mind that a person is multidimensional.
That's correct.
Multidimensional. So while we are giving them the sure word, the necessity of what happens in St. Martin becomes even more prominent.
That is correct.
It is the word and the bread.
The bread and the butter.
But we take the opportunity to celebrate, and I have to ask you to lend commendation to Pastor Kuvali,
Oh, yes.
the ministerial staff, the volunteers on the island, because I just thought that they did an awesome job.
Fantastic.
Fantastic job.
Well, as you know, Pastor Kovale should be with us here this
Yeah, well,
this
we were
evening.
trying to get him. He did give indication of his coming, but for some reason, I think that the connection is having a
Well,
problem.
let me tell you how involved he was.
Right.
Look, he said to me that he was given a pass like an essential worker, so he can be on the road anytime, you know, because he's on errands, you know, with the operation of the kitchen, and at the same time, he was the one transporting food.
That's correct.
Very much engaged.
Yep.
And under normal circumstances, you would think, well, others would be doing that, and the pastor, he has other things to do, but his hands were really in it. And I must commend him highly for his engagement. And there is a team out there with Sister Marvlet Edwards, who has established quite a reputation. The Seventh-day Adventist Church really, throughout the region, and I can speak for this conference, has established itself as having safe hands, so to speak.
Right.
So in times of crisis, NGOs and others who are willing to give things to the community in a very proportionate, orderly manner, they know if it gets in the Adventist hand, it will be safe.
Yeah.
And this has been happening in St. Martin.
Pastor Teddy Mac, you want to speak to the whole idea of the church in St. Martin, its engagement with the community, and the sacrifice that people have been making. How do you affirm them?
Well, I said this is a brilliant question, Dr. Royston Filbert, because since I'm the last evangelist to leave St. Martin,
Yeah, Pastor Teddy Mac was really the last evangelist to go to St. Martin. Go ahead.
was the last evangelist to catch the last flight leaving St. Martin. So I think I can speak about it missiologically.
Yes.
What I see happening in St. Martin is that God is at work changing St. Martin, changing the island, and at the same time changing the church. God is at work in St. Martin, fighting for the Seventh-day Adventist Church in St. Martin to give her an opportunity to reap a massive harvest next year. And so, because of the work that the church has done over the years, as rightly said, the church has built up its credibility. And now in a moment of crisis, when God is looking for persons who would gain access to the hearts of the government, access to the hearts of the officials in St. Martin, God identified the church and moved upon the hearts of the government to solicit the cooperation of the church to assist her in a time of need. This is nothing short of God. This is a typical thing that God always do in the Old Testament. You can always see He always gives the church access to the heathen nation so that He can have opportunity to change the heathen nation. Sometimes God uses the church to bless the heathen nation. Other time God uses the heathen nation to punish the church. In this case, God is using the nation. God is using the church to bless the nation, to prepare the church for a greater harvest. That which we could not have done a few weeks ago, God is now, through the crisis, bringing the church in the heart of the government, in the heart of the influential people in the community, so that now the church can speak with a voice that it never had before. And more than that, the church is extending its influence throughout the community and the island.
Okay, so we are going to, at this moment, seek to go over to Tortola, because we're coming to the end of our program, so let's go over to Tortola. Dr. Peters, you did give mention of some of the things that were happening on the island of Tortola. And from your report, it seems that there was another pastor on Tortola who was really active.
Well, Pastor Williams is a coordinator out there,
Right.
and I know he gives attention to what is happening. And I should let you know that Tortola is one of the active community services territory that we have in this conference. However, the lockdown in Tortola has been very stringent.
Yeah, it was very strict.
And
Very rigid.
they haven't been able to do a whole lot during the crisis. But they are looking for the windows, and the members are anxious just to get out there. But they are very obedient to the protocols, and they are doing what they have to do within limits. So I must let you know that they are working within limits in Tortola at this point in time. But they are doing a fantastic work in the community.
Okay, so let's see if we can bring in Pastor Sylvester Williams. I don't know, the technician, we can bring in Pastor Sylvester Williams, because we want you to understand that while all of these stringent measures are in place, there are pastors who are thinking strategic, individuals who are embracing opportunity, not just to care for the community, but also to care for the members of the church, to look for the needs that's around, and to go beyond the call of duty, to exercise care, and to let people know that in moments like these, there are people who care, and the church is looking out for them. Pastor Williams, are you there? Are you there, Pastor Williams? We are having a problem in connecting with Pastor Williams, but I'm going around.
While you're trying to connect with him, I probably like to make a point between God and the church.
Go ahead, Pastor.
It's very important as pastors, as leaders, as directors, that our primary work at this time in relationship to the church is to strengthen the church so that the church remains strong in the Lord. Because the community, the country, the island is desperately in need of the church. But if the church is weak in terms of its faith in her God, then she cannot serve the community. And so one of our top priority as leaders is to really strengthen the church through the study of the word, through intercessory prayer, through various support systems, so that the church can remain strong in her Lord while she cope with a changing world.
Thank you so much, Pastor Teddyman. Thank you so much. I'm coming to you, Pastor Matthew, because the church in its nature is called to reach out to people. And evangelism is not just baptizing people, but reaching people, impacting people, touching lives. How do you see the church now moving forward in terms of stretching its limbs so it can still embrace this whole issue of reaching and touching and evangelism?
You know, I came across some data from a research company called Plate Research, and it indicated that recently, as in the month of April, a research was done among the 50 states, and they surveyed 1,091 churches. And what they indicated is that since COVID, every church has had a drop, a lower in their income. But interestingly, since churches have gone online, churches have doubled their attendance.
That's correct.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So in this period of COVID, we have this unparalleled opportunity to do the online service, complementing what the community initiatives are. So it is a new spread of opportunities that the period actually affords us. But I also want to identify what is also critical in terms of an evangelistic component in this period is the place for the individual member while separated from the corporate church, for the individual member in his or her residence, community, location, to exert that positive impact to that nucleus that he or she identifies as his or her neighbor. So community service may be done on the corporate level, where the church is identified as a corporate body. But the member who in his or her residence intentionally engages the neighbor and seeks to bring heart and hand to the gospel is also fulfilling that.
Yeah.
So I look at
And,
it
and, and without cutting you, there are lots of people who are engaged in that.
Bless your heart.
Lots of individuals in the environs are doing great and awesome things
Sure.
that may never be reported, Dr. Peters, but they're
Definitely.
doing great things.
And you have great involvement.
Yeah.
Great involvement. And this is where you really touch the hearts of people, when
Yeah.
neighbors can really become neighbors.
Yeah.
I say neighbors becoming neighbors,
Yeah.
because they were living, so they had no time for one another. You find they go to work at different times, but now with the lockdown, folks have been home. You look over the fence, you can see the neighbor out there.
Yeah.
You hail the neighbor. How you been doing?
I'm hearing the birds
You understand?
Yes.
outside now
Yes.
that
So
I
it's an
haven't heard in a long time.
It's an opportunity to really talk with
Beautiful,
your neighbor.
beautiful, beautiful.
And find out how things are going,
Yeah.
and praying with your neighbor. And this has been very much effective as an ongoing ministry that has taken a life of its own.
Yeah, yeah. And Pastor Matthew did say it, you have the individual touch
Right.
should have been heightened during this period.
And what is really going to inform and really enlarge that circle of participants in the online church is the level of connectivity that is happening neighbor to neighbor, friend to friend. Friend to friend. Because when I actually reach out to my neighbor and reignite that relationship, or even enlarge my acquaintance with other neighbors, then I actually earn the right
To speak with them.
to actually speak to
Yeah.
them. I am
Yeah.
actually removing the layers of the onion, and it makes it much easier for me to say, man, come join me on my online church.
Right. And that's something we have to do when we have our next conversation on evangelism and social media. Because if I don't engage with my neighbor now, I lose the
It's
right
an opportunity.
to invite them to be an online meeting with me.
Definitely.
And that's some of the thing. But I want to go to Pastor Peters. I think Pastor Williams is online. Pastor Tedmack wanted to say something. Pastor Tedmack, you can take a 30 seconds and say and give your input.
Yeah. I just wanted to follow up on the personal touch that Pastor Matthews is speaking about. My question is, why is it that our evangelists have a larger audience now? Some of them have 10,000 persons listening to them online preaching, but we're baptizing less. Why?
That's directed to Pastor Matthew. Or you want me to answer it?
Well, I would begin by saying that,
Pastor Matthew, anybody?
I think ultimately this is a process. And sometimes it takes several exposure before an individual actually makes up his or her mind. So I believe that we are going to see as a church in the future a serious, significant increase, an explosion that this period of COVID would have sown, as seeds are being sowed, and they're going to generalize. But actually some people respond now and some people respond later. It's actually a process.
But it also calls for us as individuals to know how to engage with our community online. Part of the problem we have is that many individuals today are having online programs without the opportunity of, they have a glorious opportunity to engage the online audience. But preaching and leaving is not the way to go. You have to know how you can engage your online audience. You have to know how to keep them. You have to know the things that interest them, and to see how through the engagement, the content that is going to be delivered is the content that needs now. Because something online, Dr. Peters, is that you can't force people to listen to you. It is a fact that people pick and choose what they want. But as a church now, you have to deliver content that reaches the people, and so you must know different content addresses the needs of different audience. And when your program now, you need to program to an individual set of people. And I think that is where we are losing out. But we'll speak to that issue when we deal with the social media program. But I want to come back to you, Dr. Peters. Probably a hard question I want to ask you. How have we done? What do you think? How have we been doing as it relates to community impact, the church, and what it's doing during this COVID-19 time?
Well, I think under this circumstance, the church has established itself as being very much alive. Very much alive. While I said to the brethren in St. Martin last Sabbath, we may be locked down but not locked up. And so the church is very much alive, and the fact that the social media has been, with the services of the church, showing what the church offers to the community, has taken a life of its own and offering help. That of itself, I know right here in St. Croix, one of the churches, the Christian State Church, has been out there with care packages. And with the care packages, they have actually inserted our book of the year, Hope in Times of Chaos, by Mark Finley. This has been part of the package, and individuals have gotten that book, and that's pure evangelism in there. I mean, you are not only feeding them, clothing them, but you are giving them the word as well. And so I think the church has been very much alive during this time under the circumstance.
Beautiful.
And I think Pastor Matthew alluded to the fact that we may not be out there as a corporate body, but individually. For example, the book of the year, there was a date established, which was the 18th of April, to distribute that book in the community, but you know what the situation has been. But individuals in the local churches have been distributing the book, not going out in the community and say, look, we are giving books out, but giving the neighbors.
Okay.
And if I may,
Yes.
to add to what Dr. Peters has said, we all are aware that it was just about maybe a week or 2 weeks ago when the church on St. Croix in particular, and the Adventist church was invited to partner with the agency VOAD, I think it is,
Yes.
VOAD,
Yes.
where we responded to assist in delivering
Meals.
meals
Yeah.
and to provide transportation
For seniors.
here in
That's
St.
correct.
Croix. And it actually emanated out of the real need,
Yeah.
where the busing on St. Croix became challenged.
That's correct.
So it is a response that is relevant. It is a response that the community perceived to have been very urgent.
Yes.
So things are happening around the
So our volunteers were there.
Even in St. Thomas.
Right.
At Shiloh Church.
Definitely in St. Thomas. They've been out there, the Shiloh Church and the Agape Church. They've been out with the feeding program. The Philadelphia Church has been making masks for the police department to make a contribution out there. This coming Thursday,
Yes,
right here on St. Croix,
yes.
we have 125 masks already prepared to give over to the independent living
Beautiful.
quarters.
Beautiful.
And we are going to turn this over as a gift from the Adventist Church,
Beautiful.
because we were told by VOD that that's a need, and we responded to the
Beautiful.
need.
And don't miss the point that we from the North Caribbean Conference, we did have a task force that sort of tried to embrace needed evangelism, minister in the area of needs. And so we were dealing with what the needs were, and those needs were now diverted to us, and we are now using the opportunity to minister in the area of felt needs. And I think that has to be, that must be made very clear. We are ministering in the area of needs, and we want to celebrate what took place here on St. Croix, what happened in St. Thomas, practically every island. What's about St. John, Dr. Peters?
Oh, well, you know, St. John has established itself as one of the most effective community services feeding program.
Yeah.
And taking care of the homeless, and I know you wrote articles on that have gone very far and wide, and this is ongoing. You know that there are requests where we can partner to help establish that ministry, even greater than it is now going. But they are doing a great job out there as well, Little St. John.
So it seems to me that practically in every island, something is happening. Given the situation in which we found ourselves, we can say that we have been touching lives and ministering to people.
Beautiful. And that point that you reminded us of, Pastor Filbert, should be underscored, because the manner in which the church approached the task force assignment, it was just admirable, in that we didn't want to gamble as to where the needs are and how to respond.
That's correct.
So the gamut of information that is coming in is actually coming from the people as they assess what is the need of the congregants, what is the need of the same church community that we talked about, each church impacting its community. So the data that came back from the task force represents both community needs and needs of church people.
Yeah, let's talk to Pastor Teddy Mack for a minutes again, because we don't want him we don't want to lose him. But Pastor Teddy Mack, we're talking about how the church here has been strategizing and organizing itself through the data that we receive to reach to the people within its environs. And we here at the North Caribbean Conference, we established a task force, and that task force was able to outline various needed areas in which we can give specific ministry. And that ministry has begun to bear fruit. It has begun to touch lives. We are seeing evidence that it's moving. We see it's rolling, and we think that before too long, we are going to complete the assignment that has been given to us. But how do you speak to that, Pastor Teddy Mack?
Well, sometimes I have difficulties with the church social ministry. She seems to be taking care of the physical, social, emotional needs of the people, but she's not able to translate that ministry into an effective evangelistic strategy. Example, there is a church in Florida here. They have a feeding program every Thursday for Hispanic people in the community. And on the Thursday, there are hundreds of Hispanic people coming to the church for food, but there is not one Hispanic in that church on a Sabbath. So the church needs to be able to identify the needs, one, but the church also needs to find how those needs are echoed in scriptures. What does scripture have to say about those needs that they identify in scripture, and allow scripture to speak to those needs? In that way, the gospel can be related to the needs, and people can see the connection between the needs and what God is saying about those needs. So it is very important that our preachers be aware of those needs, so that in their presentation of the gospel, our members in the presentation of or giving a Bible study can connect what the scripture says about those needs, and so people can see the relationship and they can be led to Christ. I think COVID-19 creates a need for a massive retraining of our lay people, training of our pastors. How do you present the word so that it becomes relevant to people in the particular context in which they now live?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Dr. Peters?
I love that, because we say we are meeting the felt needs of the community, but somehow we haven't been able to bridge that gap. And annually in the church, for example, or under normal circumstance, we do have what we call Community Services Day. Wouldn't it be a great idea if we were to invite all these homeless people to church on a Community Services Day? The people people with whom we've been working with or ministering to. We provide clothes for people. We provide food for people. Wouldn't it be a great idea that on a Community Services Day, just as we would do the feeding program on the Sundays and other days of the week, where we have hundreds of people, we can see our church just being filled with these kinds of people, and they are placed in an environment where they would not only be fed, of course, physically, but spiritually as well, ministered to in that context. So I think that's a great suggestion, Pastor Telemac.
I want to. We are almost 50 minutes into a discussion, and we have to begin winding down.
Can I just add a point? Example, following what Dr. Peters said, homeless person. So the problem or the issue is homelessness. Now, what does the Bible have to say about homelessness? How does the Bible give a critique about homelessness? Who can you find in the Bible who was homeless? So in that way, you allow the Bible to critique that particular need. So people hear the Bible speaking directly to that need. And in that way, you connect with people and lead them to Christ very easily.
Thank you so much.
Very much so.
I'm coming to you, Pastor Matthew. Our models of ministry needs to change, specifically as it relates to reaching to people. But in all of what we do, I have to go back to what you said earlier. We cannot walk away from the personal touch, which means the individual has to take responsibility for being the hands and feet of Christ wherever he or she is. I think we cannot end without celebrating that. The model that we use may be, it cannot be the same model that we used before, because I don't think that we will be able in the future to do evangelism the way we're doing it right now. There has to be a shift in what we're doing. But we cannot escape the value that we place on what Christ is. Christ's method alone will bring true success. The Savior mingled with men. So, and he won their confidence, and then he bade them, come follow me. So the personal touch cannot be thrown away. We have to seek every opportunity to celebrate and and when I say celebrate, I'm speaking about we as God's people being frontliners as what's happening in St. Martin, understanding that there are things we can do as the people of God that does not create the risk, but yet still give us an opportunity to take the risk because we want to be the hands and feet of Jesus Christ. And the moment we walk away from that as God's people, we're losing the opportunity that God has created for us to give evidence and testify that in spite of all of what has taken place, God has proven himself to be on the side of his people. I think we can't miss that. Okay, so we are 52 minutes into a program, and I think it's time for us to wrap up. So, as I said earlier, this is intended to celebrate, and Dr. Peters, I want to give you an opportunity now to celebrate and say thanks to our pastors and our workers outside there who've been making great sacrifice for community service. I'm going to ask Dr. Matthew to do the same, and I'm going to ask Pastor Telemark to do the same as we give celebration to all those frontline workers, the men and women in our community services who have been making sacrifice, taking leaps of faith, and celebrate what God has been doing to them. Pastor Dr. Peters?
Well, it's the fact that this pandemic has been something of a very unique nature. We have never seen anything like that before. And I think that our people, in as much as they've been proactive in so many ways in terms of meeting the needs in times of disaster, this one is of a different nature. And they have still braced themselves, and they've been out there doing the best under the circumstance. And I want to really tip my hat out to them, because pastors, you've been doing a wonderful job standing with your community services, standing with the church in terms of prioritizing, getting out to those who are most vulnerable in your community. I've been talking to the community services members. I know lots of you have set up programs to see that during this crisis hour, that those who are most vulnerable in your community are being looked at by the church and taken good care of. So you have been doing a wonderful job in this regard. Of course, we wish we could do more. The cry is for more resources, not the human resources per se, but the finances to really do more. And I pray that because God has given us all a heart of compassion as followers, that as the needs continue to rise, that we would do our best. And just one of our pastors said to me, look, we have just identified a number of people in our community. We are going to give out some finances like vouchers and so forth so that they can get food. So I want to applaud you for these sort of things, and God bless you. When ministry and laity join hands together, we are going to make a difference in the community.
Thank you so much. Pastor Matthew?
Yes, I just want to salute all of the pastors and lay leaders and members of the churches who continue to embrace this moment and this season seriously. Of course, everyone is constantly making himself vulnerable to the pain of others. But when we recognize that we are working for a kingdom that will certainly be a kingdom that has no end, and we are working for a higher ethic, this is what actually sustains us from day to day. So I just want to encourage all to remain resilient and keep the large picture in mind, The end is that individuals whom we serve become disciples of Jesus Christ.
Thank you so much. Pastor Teddyman, that's your time.
And I certainly want to say a special affirmation to all the frontline workers in the North Caribbean Conference, the pastors, the teachers, the nurses, and the laity, and especially those in St. Martin, Pastor Coverley, and a young pastor there from Ephesus Church, and all the other pastors for already taking good care of me so I didn't get COVID while I was in St. Martin. But I really want to thank the church there in North Caribbean Conference, especially the lay people from the Peter's Rest Church, the Ravaliers and the Poxons and all those Dominican workers. I want to affirm you and let you know to rise up like Nehemiah and build the walls once again for God. And finally, I want to say to all of the members in and leaders in North Caribbean Conference, you need to cultivate a missiological perspective of this crisis. Here is the missiological perspective. God is at work changing the world and changing the church at the same time. He's changing the world to give the church an opportunity to reap a great harvest in the world. Therefore, at this time, the church needs to remain strong in her God, united in him, because God is fighting for the church. What is happening in the world today? God dismantling and many of the structures and the security base of people. God is at work fighting in the world for the church to give the church an opportunity to reap the harvest. So church, remain strong. Leaders, remain strong. You're going to reap a massive harvest in the North Caribbean Conference very soon.
Thank you. And I want to thank my studio guests. And thank you. This is the second edition of Perspective. This evening we celebrated community services, the men and women who have been frontliners, going beyond the call of duty to be the hands and feet of Jesus, risking their own lives, placing their families in danger, but yet still overcoming hurdles and barriers and doing the will of God. We want to say thanks to you. We also want to take the opportunity to celebrate all of our members who are nurses, the families. Today is the day when the world celebrates nurses. We want to take time to celebrate them. Thank you for being who you are, and we recognize you as not only individuals who are members of our congregation, but we see you as making an invaluable contribution towards the success and the movement of God's people doing what is right in times like these. We want to let you know that we are thankful, we're happy we could have been here with you. Tomorrow evening, God's willing, we're going to be with you again because there is a day of prayer tomorrow that convenes at 7 p.m. past Dr. Peters. 7 to 8:30 tomorrow evening, and so all world leaders, we're convening a special day of prayer, prayer evening on tomorrow evening from 7 to 8, sorry. And we want to invite you to log on to the social media of the North Caribbean Conference, and you'll have it. And also on Sabbath coming, God's willing, we're going to be there with you again because there is a special program from 11 to 12 when our leaders will convene a special session to speak to the leadership, the membership of our church in the Inter-American Division. And then next Tuesday, God's willing, we're going to be back with the third segment of our Perspectives, where we will celebrate all our communication directors for what they have been doing around the North Caribbean Conference during this COVID-19. We want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here with us. We wish you God's blessing. Thank you, Dr. Teddy Mack, for being here with us. And we wish you God's blessing until we meet again. Thank you. Goodbye.